Welcome to P2 at Fighting. I'm James, and today we're going to talk about Arnis or Escrima, Cali, kind of interchangeable words for stick fighting. Now this is the one martial art where I have no experience, so all of the information I'm going to bring today is from research. A lot of reading, a lot of watching, a lot of asking people. Like I have very little technical knowledge. I've done a little bit of stuff, but it wasn't the real deal. And so I have to say that this was an honor to learn about this style. And I have to put this style really high on the list of how I rate styles. This is one of the top ones. I had no idea that there was a style of martial arts that did as much as this one and is as time tested as this one. All right, so let's go ahead and get into this. Arnis is a old Spanish word for armor. Escrima is a Filipino word for blades, or fencing. So it's the Filipino version of fencing. And Cali is a pre-Hispanic Filipino word for fencing. So everything about these words is blades and weapons and fencing. So obviously, yes, this style comes from the Philippines. And the Philippines have what we call a blade culture. A blade culture. So the West had a blade culture too, where everyone was into knives and swords and things like that, until guns came along, and then the West said, screw the blades, we'll deal with the guns. And they went with guns and left the blades behind somewhat. Whereas in the Philippines, they didn't do so. They stuck with the blades. So that's kind of what's going on here. This is so interesting. One of the most interesting points about this is that in Arnis, they train weapons first, hand-to-hand combat later. So you would think, because in most styles, they teach hand-to-hand combat first, and then they add weapons in as you get better and better with your hand-to-hand techniques. This is completely opposite. They want you to master the weapons first and then learn hand-to-hand combat. I think that idea is very interesting because their belief is the weapon movement with the two sticks or the blades or whatever you want to use. If you can master the weapon movement, well, the weapon is an extension of your arms. That's an extension of your hand. So if you learn how to use the weapons correctly, then you will automatically know how to use your hands, because without the weapon, you're doing the same movement. So they teach you the style with the weapon. So if you put the weapon down, you've still got that same movement, but you're just using it without the weapon. Very interesting. I have not heard of a style that does that except this one. And it was something that never came to my head to do. I never thought to start with weapons. Now, I took karate, and in karate, we learned, well, in my style, which was very close to Shotokan, we learned weapons and open hand-to-hand at the same time. We had the katas and kumite, but also the weapons. In the same class, we would separate a section of time for each. So I did the bow staff and the tonfas, and so I would learn those at the same time. So as I came up through the ranks, I learned them together. But most styles don't. Most styles, you learn your open hand for a while. Then when they think you have control of yourself, then they put a weapon in your hand. But here, weapons are first and only weapons. It's a nice little strategy. Originally, there was no belt system. They've added a belt system lately, but that's more of a marketing deal to make the style more marketable to the outside world. Back in those days when Arnis was created, which was a long time ago, you didn't want to walk around calling yourself the baddest blade master in the world because you would get challenged by somebody and one of y'all would die. So you're just putting a target on your back with weapons. It's one thing to walk around calling yourself a tough guy, you know, in a hand-to-hand style, because y'all might go outside, fight it out, and somebody's hurt, but everybody lives. But when you call yourself the top badass of blades, yeah, someone's going to challenge you and someone's going to die. So they didn't do that. They didn't have built systems. They didn't have masters. They just had good people that trained less good people to make them good people. And that's kind of how they did it. Now, another thing I like about this style is it also seems to be very complete. On top of the weapons, they have kicking, punching, locking, throwing, and grappling. It's all in this style. I watched some videos of the Filipino wrestling. They actually have wrestling in here. I've seen the punches, the kicks. They have a whole style that's just kicking. And it's part of it. It's pretty complete. It's pretty complete. Check out these knives that are here. Knives and sticks. These weapons are very interesting. Very effective. These are very effective weapons. And on top of that, this style has aged well over time. Now, I have seen some videos where people say, oh, you can't do all that stuff in real life. This is all movie stuff where they're twirling the sticks all quick. Like you watch Jeff Speakman doing the fast movements, or Dan Inosanto doing the fast stick movements. And some people say it's fake. Some people say you can't move that quick with weapons in real life. It doesn't work that way. I'm going to tell you, this style was time tested. They were using this style in war. They had warriors called Maro warriors who were just entirely blade masters. And there is an interesting story about how the Colt 1911 and the .45 caliber bullet came along. A lot of people don't know what led to the development of the Colt 1911 or the .45 caliber bullet. It was these blade masters that created that caused that to happen. So they were having the Filipino-American War, and the Philippines had these guys called the Maro warriors. They were blade masters. They didn't use guns, they used blades. And you had a situation where you had an American serviceman and a Maro warrior were fighting. The American serviceman had a .38. He emptied his whole .38 long Colt revolver into this Maro warrior, all of his bullets. He shot him with everything he had. And the Maro warrior still decapitated him, chopped his entire head off after he ate all those bullets. So, events like that are eventually what was the development of the Colt 1911 and the .45 caliber bullet, because they had to develop something that had more stopping power. So for all you gun lovers that are curious about why'd they make the .45, why'd they make the Colt 1911, it's because you had guys with knives chopping down guys with guns. They say don't bring a knife to a gunfight, but in this situation, the knife won. And because of the knife winning, they had to make a bigger bullet. So it's a very interesting story. Parts of this style. So they have what you would call katas. They're called anyo. And they're just movements where you kind of go back and forth and you learn the movement of your style. It's very much like a kata. But man, with weapons, it's a bit more realistic because you're swinging sticks. It's I don't know. I watched them. I really want you to just watch some of the videos of these guys hitting bags, hitting things, doing their steps, doing their movements. It's very fluid, very nice to watch as well. They have duels. They have competitions. In classical Arnis, they had a lot of duels, and they didn't use protection. And it reminds me of back in the day. I remember this group called the Dog Brothers, and they're still going now. And I didn't know that. I looked it up and found that the Dog Brothers are still a thing. But back when I was still in karate, I had heard of them. They were in the Black Belt magazine, and they were just these guys that would meet up, and they call it the meeting of the pack, I believe, and they would just fight each other with no protection except maybe just headgear. I think at first there was no protection, and they fought full contact with weapons, and they would mess each other up, and they were probably the most extreme you could get as far as fighting goes. If you wanted to get in there and do it, they would let you. The whole thing was being friends at the end of the whole thing. But those guys are still going. I looked them up, man. It's pretty surprising. The Dog Brothers. If you want to see what stick fighting looks like in a real situation, not a movie, look up some of the Dog Brothers stuff, man. They get in there and they really try to hit each other with weapons. It's very interesting. You have some organizations in the Philippines that are trying to continue the culture of Arnis. They just made it a national sport, I think, in 2010. So that's great that they're teaching stick fighting as a national sport. You have some countries like Korea, Taekwondo is a national sport. In Japan, Judo and Karate are national sports. So, it's cool to see that they have something as well. So the weapons they have the bastion, which is the stick, and they have a lot of impact weapons, and then they have edged weapons, and the edge weapons are crazy looking. They're just machetes. They look like big curvy machetes. And I watched one video where the guy's swinging the stick around, and then he says, yeah, the reason why it looks this way is because originally they had these in their hands, and he showed this machete. They started swinging that around. Could you imagine fighting like that? And they attack your danger spot. So they tend to go after your hands because your weapons are in your hands. So yes, they'll hit you in the head and they'll hit you in the stomach and all of that. But a lot of the times they're going for your hands. They want to chop your hand off because your hand is holding the weapon. You can't fight without your hands. So in most of the sparring matches that I watched, I saw them, especially when they were demonstrating what they would do with blades. They would twirl them around, and then they would hit their hands. They were really going for those a lot. So they wore these giant padded gloves. But as much as they were going for the head, they were also going for the hands. And I can see why that would be really important. Because you can disarm somebody by hitting them in the hand. Gun, knife, doesn't matter. It's in your hand. Your hand punches everything. So if you crack somebody's hand, or you have a blade and you lop that hand off, the fight's over. There's nothing else they can do if their hand is dangling down like this. So I think this style is very realistic. I think it's great for the street. And the reason why I think it's great for the street is because they practice with knives, with sticks, long ones, short ones, long knives, short knives, and they learn movements that are useful. People walk around with weapons. I see people with knives all the time. I carry a knife all the time. Almost every time I leave the house, I have my knife with me because I don't have my CCW yet, so that's coming. But as of right now, yeah, I have a knife on me almost 100% of the time. And in my house, if someone was to break in, I have access to at least 10 knives within my eyesight. So to learn how to use a knife correctly is very feasible for the street. There's so much more that I could really say about this style. But I mean, this video would be an hour long. They do a lot of drills. Oh yeah, live hand. So live hand. So a lot of times in styles, for example, if you watch Taekwondo, you'll see them kicking a lot. And what are their hands doing? Their hands are just kind of right here. They're just right here, you know? And so they don't do anything with them. And if you watch in fencing, for example, they use one hand to fight with the sword, and the other hand is behind their back, and they don't use it. It's just hidden. Well, in Arnis, Escrima, the live hand matters. This is the hand that doesn't have a weapon in it. So if they have one baston or knife and one empty hand, they use this hand also for blocking, for trapping, for locking, and you know, things like that. So the live hand matters a lot in this style. One thing they focus on too is being ambidextrous. They want you to be able to do different motions with your hands, with each hand. They want each hand to have a mind of its own. So they really do teach you your hands becoming very independent, which is extremely useful at all times. There's something else that they teach in boxing. They want you to be able to, like if you fight one way, they'll teach you to fight that way. But I know when I boxed, my coach wanted me to be able to use both my hands independently, jab and power punch with both hands. Well, in this style here, they care a lot about you having ambidextrousness. They want your hands to be able to do different things at the same time. So, wow, another unbelievable skill in this style. I think if I gotta, let me see. So my highest score so far was Muay Thai, which I gave 8 out of 10. I gave Karate a 6. I gave Taekwondo a 4. And I gave Aikido a 0. Arnis, man, I'm gonna give Arnis an 8.5. I'm gonna put it above Muay Thai. And the reason why is because you're not only learning kicking, punching, locking, throwing, and grappling, you're also mastering weapons as well. I think that's key. Now listen, as I rate these styles, no style's getting a 10. There's only one thing getting a 10, that's a gun. The number one self-defense system, if you want to defend yourself the top way possible, get a gun, get your CCW, that's it. Number one protection in the world is a gun. So no one's getting a 10. Only the gun holds that area. But below that, yeah, I think Arnis is going to get an 8.5 because they're doing everything. Obviously, they're not Muay Thai. They don't teach elbows and knees. They might. I haven't looked into it deeply enough to see if they do. But the fact that they teach kicking, punching, locking, throwing, grappling, and weapons, and they make you master the weapon first, just gives it an edge. I haven't checked to see if Muay Thai teaches weapons. I don't think it does. I haven't seen anything that has led me to believe that Muay Thai teaches weapons. But the thing about Arnis is that they teach the weapon first. You have to master the weapon first. So before but at the same time, those same movements are your hand-to-hand combat movements. So you're learning them together, but they're not teaching you anything serious empty-handed until you master the weapon. So think about this. You're walking around with a knife and you're a blade master. You're like, it's so useful because what they teach is useful in the street. Any knife you pick up, you'll know how to use. Any stick you see on the ground, you'll know how to take it and turn it into some kind of weapon. Any stick. anything. You get in a fight, you break off a tree branch, and if it's, you can just blap, break it in half, and now you're ready to go. Like, that is street self-defense to the core. So I really rate this style really high. And I did only about 72 hours of research on this one. A lot of reading, a lot of video, a lot of talking to people that may know. I joined a couple groups to ask a couple questions on Quora. But wow, amazing style. So yeah, 8.5. This style is seriously good for self-defense. That's my take on it. If you got any comments, put them below on this style. If you know about this style, comment below. If you've taken this style, let me know what you think. Anyway, that's my take on it. Like and subscribe. Holla at your boy.